Have you ever wondered what it would be like if Franz Ferdinand had never been assassinated? No? Well, I'm going to tell you anyways. Franz Ferdinand was the Archduke of Austria and was the most famous for getting shot in the head and starting World War I, but was also known as a decent leader. His death was the catalyst for World War I. The first catalyst due to his death is that war never happens. But not really. I think it would just get delayed, but we'll get into that later. Franz Ferdinand was reported to want better relations with Russia, so one of the first things I can see happening is better Russian and Austrian relations. Every country's economy would be in a better place with no war. Germany would have the world's best industry due to no damage from the war, so they could be producing lots more equipment than they had in the war to begin with. Great Britain would have the best economy before the war, because with no war, their economy would continue to thrive, and the United States would not pass them as they would have not benefited from the trade from the war. Speaking on the United States would likely be much more isolationist with no war, and their economy would not grow to the sizes it did during the war. The Russian Revolution was a big event that happened during World War I, and without German assistance, it may have not succeeded. This would benefit the Central Powers, as the governments before the Bolsheviks were very weak and corrupt. We may very well still see a revolution in Russia, just maybe farther down the timeline. And with a weak government and a decent relationship with Austria, Russia may have stayed neutral, or even joined the Central Powers. Since the war was delayed, the Spanish flu might not have been as bad as it was in our timeline. We would have been more prepared for the pandemic and had fewer people traveling around to spread the disease. By 1920, the disease would be over, and world tensions would be at an all-time high. This is where the alternate World War I breaks out. The countries of Britain, France, and Italy were against Germany, Austria, and the Ottoman Empire. Every country would be stronger than in our timeline, but Germany especially, with their mighty industry. Russia would stay neutral, but was friendly to Austria and traded with them. Where I talk about the alternate war, so all of this is just my speculation, and this is not for sure what's going to happen, so fair warning. Germany would break through into France with their superior technology and come to a standstill just outside of Paris, where it would turn into trench warfare. Austria would try to invade Italy, but fail due to the mountain terrain and Italy's willpower, and Italy would push them back and go on the offensive. After a couple months of war, Britain and her colonies invade the Ottoman Empire for oil. After the Ottomans try and fail to capture the Suez Canal, the British successfully retake the canal but don't get any further as the Ottomans push them back. Austria enlists Russia to help push Italy out of its border, and together they push Italy back and make them surrender. After years of trench warfare in France, the French soldiers start to mutiny. Britain sees this and evacuates its soldiers back to the island. Germany uses this mutiny to push farther into Paris. France surrenders after this, and later Britain does as well. The Central Powers win the war in this timeline due to many factors. The first is that Russia is not at war with Germany, letting Germany focus its full forces on France and Britain. The second is that Germany had more time to develop its military in this timeline, and with a great industry, they get pretty far with it. The third is that American reinforcements never came. In our timeline, France did almost have a mutiny, but the fresh American soldiers that came in helped stop that from happening. After the war, France is humiliated. They lose land, are forced to pay reparations, and have many losses from the war. I can see a similar thing happening in France after the war that happened in our timeline with Germany. Citizens in France become fed up with the conditions and start a socialist revolution that succeeds, and France becomes a socialist nation. Britain is also forced to pay reparations, but it's not as bad as France. Italy loses a little bit of land to Austria, but is in good shape, all things considered. Austria wins the war, but their government later collapses, and their country is brought into the new German Empire. The Ottoman Empire loses land to Britain and later collapses due to a Muslim revolution that is assisted by Britain. The empire is broken up into several different countries after this. Russia gets a little bit richer from the war due to trade, but most people still live in poverty. The German Empire are the victor of the war. They become the largest economy in the world, followed closely by the United States, and they have the largest military in the world. They are now at the center of Europe and become the world's new superpower. This scenario comes from my imagination and the historical context from the time, and is no way of what would have happened because we'll never know. And there could be thousands of different ways this could have played out, but I think this one is pretty interesting.